Welcome everybody to Tech Breakfast. This is we've got a special guest today, Derek Snyder, who I believe is somewhere here.
Good morning.
I saw him. Hey, Derek, thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
So Derek is the account director of client solutions at MelroseMAC, I believe. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about file data storage solutions and some ProTools updates. Are you visual there, Derek?
Sure. I got a face for radio, but you know.
We'll see how you're going to be carrying the weight of the world this morning. There you go.
Amen. Thank you for having me. I'm also going to have a couple other people join me. One is on the line right now, Max Gozark, who's also an account director with Melrose Inc. And we'll have Chris Mallamaci from Avid joining as well. And he should be here shortly if he's not already on.
Good morning, everybody.
Hey, so if you're not familiar with Melrose, Melrose has been around about 20 years, a little over 20 years. And we're a leading supplier of AV and IT solutions, tech solutions for primarily the post-production community. But we service government and really anyone that needs AV or IT solutions. So we've built multimedia production facilities, broadcast facilities, conference rooms, and what I want Max actually to speak about, and something that I've been having conversations more and more about recently, is storage of data, file storage management, and how we approach this, because you guys as creators, producers, recording engineers have a variety of different workflows. You may have a staff, you may just be working by yourself, and depending on how you are capturing your data, primarily audio, I think for this group, there are a whole lot of different ways to attack that. And with that, I'd like Max to speak to that point, starting with probably the simplest, desktop storage solutions, and then moving on up. Max?
Go ahead and
Good
turn
morning,
your mic
everybody.
on there. Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. I'm Derek. Thank you so much for inviting me to this meeting. I appreciate it. So I'm not sure how you guys are, how the team right now is collecting data and storing data. Can you guys share with me what you're doing with your files right now, or with the music, or anything that you guys are storing right now? How are you guys storing it?
I think there's going to be a variety of, these are all independent folks here, Max. So they have a whole smattering of ways to tackle it. Tony, if I can call you out, how are you handling your storage
Data.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I make my clients buy their own drives. So because I get to the point where you're juggling so many clients, it just gets to be ridiculous.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I have at this present time 6 drives that are 4 terabytes apiece, and I work on one drive and then I back up to another drive. And then I have a personal tank that's got a 12 terabyte tank, and it's just over USB 3, and I've got it hooked up over there. So then I work, I've got some internal drives that are SSD. So data, I had a client from 2001 who called me up the other day and said, you know that song we did in 2001?
Uh-oh.
Can you pull that up, and can you get me like the vocal percussion from that tune and get me this and this and this? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I keep all of my files up to date. When ProTools 12 comes out, I will go through all of his stuff and save as the new version 12, new version 13, I'll do the same thing because all these things were originally cut on Pro Tools 5. So I need lots and lots and lots of storage.
Understood. And you also need to be able to track those files somehow.
Yes.
Because you're organized. I'm sure everybody is, but I've also worked with a lot of people who are not as organized as they should be. So if a client from 2001 calls and says, "Hey, do you have these tracks?" A lot of them are like, "Yeah, I got them somewhere. Let me go look for them." And the typical workflow is exactly what you have. Clients will either bring in their own hard drive, or you will sell them a hard drive, and you ship it off and you're done, or you have a backup of it somewhere, and should they need that data again from 2001, you have a way of giving it to them. You have a great setup over there. Typically the best practice is to have a backup of it for them. However, how much of it can you back up, and how long are you going to hold on to it for? You can't hold on to that thing forever. You're not Iron Mountain. You don't have a storage facility that's infinite. So you do typically there is a kill time that a lot of songwriters or people who need data have, say a 5-year or 7-year retention. But if you have the space to keep it and give them their own folders, that's great. Have you guys ever looked at any kind of RAID besides, like Tony, you mentioned that you have a 12 terabyte. Have you looked at anything larger than that? Maybe something that has redundancy or even backup, cloud backup capabilities? Is that something that you think would benefit
All of my
anybody
drives
here?
all my drives are backed up to Backblaze.
Oh, you got it. You got a beautiful setup.
Well, there's a reason why I work. So it's the clients
so
who are
that's
calling after 20 years and saying, "Hey, can you pull up this and pull up that?" And it's like, they know they're going to be able to get what they need to. So it's.
I think that's a really, really good good point, Tony. And I'm curious to hear from others on the call, if they're as organized as yourself, because my experience is that most are not. They have a smattering of drives all over the place and projects from years back. And, these days with the myriad ways that IP can be packaged and resold and licensed, you guys, as the guys that are capturing this stuff, when you're able to deliver clean, organized files to your clients, that's really valuable. And if you're having to hunt and peck trying to find stems or sessions, and there are all kinds of old formats, well, then that's not as sellable, is it? So I'm glad to hear, Tony, that you're on point. But to Max's point, and I guess to your point as well, the importance of backup, cloud backup, redundancy is something that should be considered or talked about.
100%. Yeah. I mean, cloud backup is really the way to go because it is the most secure way to go, but it is not the cheapest and the fastest. Having something on-prem is really great, and having it archived in the cloud is the best way of going. So basically, you finish your job for your client, you keep it on premises somewhere on, say you have a 30 terabyte RAID, 24 terabyte RAID, whatever your needs are. And then you have your RAID backed up to the cloud. Should, God forbid, something happened, their natural disaster, somebody got their hands on it when they weren't supposed to, or accidentally deleted something on the one that you have in-house. You always have that backup on the cloud, and you don't have to pay the egress or regress fees all the time. So you store it on site and then back it up, archive it on the cloud. That would be the best workflow. But Tony's right on it.
Does anyone
anybody else?
Does anyone on this call use Amazon S3 or a cloud media backup? No. Melrose happens to offer a private media cloud, which if anyone is interested in that kind of solution, you can chat me or email after the call. But we have a military encrypted private media cloud solution for not just for archival, but for clients that are remote, and a variety of different applications. But it's something to look at for sure.
Yeah, it's basically a remote workflow solution for people who don't want to keep everything on premises. They want to keep it somewhere that's secure and encrypted. Basically, it's the same co-location that Raytheon uses. Very secure, up to date, powers there. They have multiple generators should power go out in case of a natural disaster or anything like that. That is the service we do offer, should anybody need it.
Any questions on storage? And if not, we can move on.
Well, I have a question on storage. When right now, what is the standard package for? Is it like 8 terabytes? Is it SSD based? Is it still spinning drives? Just for it to tank something, not as a workable drive. How many terabytes are you guys usually shipping to clients?
So it looks like the technology is moving towards SSDs or NVMEs versus the spinning disks, because if none of you guys hopefully have ever experienced a dead drive, that's what you get them on the spinning ones. You hardly get them. You get hard drives that are dead when it's in the SSD or NVMe technology. So the prices on those two technologies are coming down, becoming a little bit more affordable. I wouldn't say you could compare them to the spinning disks just yet, but they're getting there. For something for you to just dump data on and store it, still, as the spinning disks are the leading technology. Let me rephrase that. The leading horse in this race. I wouldn't say the leading technology, but yes, the typical rate that we give clients or clients ask for, anywhere from let's say 12 all the way up to 124 terabytes or 144 terabytes. 144 terabytes is for,
It's big.
that's pretty big. Yeah, I would say it's for a studio or someone who's got files going back to 1985. So it all depends on how much space you need, but the typical RAID is going to be anywhere from 12 to 20 terabytes right now.
So how much is a 25? How much is a 12 terabyte? Because I've got like all my drives are just stacked up, waiting to go. And when I'm done with the project, I have a workable drive, and that drive that to the backup drive, and then all of that overnight goes up to the cloud. I don't know how. There are other people on here who must be doing something similar to that. Like Dylan, what are you doing? Because you've got to be like handling tons of data, right? Dylan?
Gotta unmute, Dill.
Maybe Dylan fell asleep. But I can't be the only one who's doing that kind of stuff, other people have got to be using large amounts of data, just backing up everywhere. Although I've never seen a 124 terabyte drive before. Jesus, what do you use?
We've installed larger than that, but they work off of those. So we just finished deploying for studio an all NVMe 100. Don't quote me. I believe it was 180 terabyte all NVMe. They could work off of it and store off of it, and they also have a deep and cheap archival or backup on-prem, it's all spinning disks. They have half a petabyte that they dump all their work on and offload it off to NVMe so it doesn't drag that down.
And how much is that? I mean, just throw out a number. How much is a 180 terabyte backup drive?
Well, that's in a enterprise class solution. So it's specialized. It's not just something that it's custom made. It's not something off the shelf. That is roughly $200,000.
Well, that's true, Max, but I mean, you can get into a 160 terabyte. I mean, we just built one, or spec'd one, I should say, 160 terabyte GB Labs solution with tape backup that was like about 80 grand. So it's not cheap. When you're talking
No,
about
it's definitely not cheap.
larger format storage, it starts to get costly. But
Yes.
but these are, like Max said, enterprise level, multi-user clients.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you have multiple people hitting this at the same time and working off of it at the same time.
So for the single user, what do you recommend?
I would say it's case by case. However, on-prem, something like a SanDisk Pro for a single user, SanDisk Professional RAID would be a great solution. You could dump all your stuff on that, and again, back it up onto the cloud, whether you're using Backblaze or Wasabi or S3, any of those. That workflow is, I don't want to say guaranteed, but it's probably the safest workflow you can have.
So how big a RAID system do you recommend? I have a 4 terabyte one. It's kind of small, but it's a RAID.
I don't think the size is as important. I mean, how much data that you're managing in your environment. And so I think having a little headroom, whether if you're maxed out at 4 terabytes, well, then maybe you should have 8 terabytes, right? And then not only the headroom, let's say, but also just the redundancy for backup. And I would also throw out that if you are in the 10 to 20 terabytes of data, that's what you're managing in your world. Our private media cloud is really cheap. I mean, we store I think it's $9 a month per terabyte to store data at our private media cloud. So
and that's all in.
Yeah, and so there's no cost to input or take the data. Once you are signed up with us, that data is secure, locked away. And keep in mind, with a media cloud, you have no worries about anything burning down at your house, no electrical interruption, no hacking. I mean, it is as encrypted as it could possibly be. We don't have access to it. It's yours. And so if you're, in the, like I said, under 20 terabytes, something like that, it's relatively inexpensive to have that kind of insurance capability.
David, you mentioned Dropbox as a backup solution. It's that Dropbox is fine. Dropbox essentially is a cloud service. I don't use them. I don't know anybody who does in this industry, but depending on your needs and the amount of data that you're putting up there, yeah, it should be perfectly fine. I don't know how much they charge.
They charge about $120 a year just for 2 terabytes. And Tony, you were talking about having your clients buying their own drives.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in our case, we're setting everything up on a cloud and giving a link to the client to pull stuff down. Now, we're not doing large music production. We're doing advertising and motion pictures and animation. So the files are relatively small. And we'll store things on drives on our main RAID 10, which would be only 6 terabytes. We'll hold it there for 2 years. but it's also being automatically transferred to a drive that would be considered the vault. After 2 years, that drive is duplicated, and we go off and keep one on site and keep one off site. So we mitigate all the issues about clouds and everything for anything beyond 2 years. And the Dropbox has worked out well because it's a common denominator for people in the motion picture and animation industry. It's a no-brainer for them. So and we also we'll keep as long as we can, the actual projects on our RAID 10, 2 terabyte RAID 10s on each one of the workstations. So we have redundancy and we have reliability, and it's worked out pretty well. Having something local there to say, okay, in 5 minutes I can pull out the Volt drive for X period, January of 2000 or something, and pull out the file because that's organized by client identification. And that's pretty good, especially when you're doing like the Peanuts cartoons and you got to go back way, way, way back, not the first generation, but the second generation. So yeah, Dropbox has been pretty straightforward for us. But of course, we have much more modest density needs than most of you guys here.
I'm not brave enough to use Dropbox. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, it's been a thing where our clients are insisting upon it, and they're big players. So
yeah, I use WeTransfer all the time.
That's a big one.
Because it's a click and done, and I have a receipt. I understand what they're doing. I know that they got it on such, and it's in my email, and there's no debate. The thing that drives me crazy about Dropbox is if you drop something on there, you don't know when it's completely uploaded. You have no idea. And so you start pulling stuff down and it's not completely, I had a client who's just like, oh, I'll just give it to you on Dropbox. And it got stuck in the middle of his upload. And here I am trying to pull stuff down. I'm like, dude, this is not going to work. Send me a WeTransfer file. It's all the way up there. I get one link and I'm done.
One thing we didn't mention, and I don't know if any of you guys work with Disney or Netflix or these larger streaming services, but they have actual certifications for security on how you manage their content. And if you couldn't use Dropbox with them, they wouldn't allow it.
No.
So in order to get that kind of certification, there's a level of encryption that has to be installed and available.
Security.
Yeah. So with our private media cloud, we have that. And then in other solutions that we deploy for enterprise clients, we also have that ability to provide that level of security. So it may not be the case for a lot of what you're doing, but if you are, it's a factor.
We as subcontractors for Netflix projects have not been put under that kind of scrutiny, which we don't mind. We would do whatever they need to do. Well, we're told to go to different places, and we haven't had any major issues with Netflix. Disney, yes, but we don't work with Disney, so not anymore.
Yeah. So they all fall under an umbrella called TPN, is the Trusted Partner Network. Essentially, what they do for the primes, not the subs, is that they'll come in, make sure that the facility, or say at least the room where the video sits and the audio sits, all the mixing and all that, whoever has access to that data, it's secured with a access control keypad on the door. So not that, everybody doesn't have access to it, only select few. There is a surveillance camera, or video camera that is stationed to record who's going in and out at what times. And they want to make sure there's an air gap between the data, the media, and the internet. So you can't, I guess if anybody really wants to, they can, but you can't. It makes it a lot harder for anybody to be able to hack and get that media and release the next $200 million movie that James Cameron was working on, and just put it on the internet and not make their money back. So that's how they're trying to protect the media and their partners under the TPN network.
Let me ask a quick question here. Tony, what are you paying yearly for Backblaze?
Think it might be $80. I have to check.
Unlimited. It says unlimited data. Is that really the case?
Yeah, as long as the stuff is connected to the drive, it's unlimited. So in my system, though, I could just kind of take you guys on a quick tour over here. Each one of these drives is just sitting here, right?
You're
Very
You're
out of
fuzzed out.
focus.
What?
you have the
focus.
background.
So, okay, all the drives are just connected to my system. And they're just sitting there. And as long as they are connected, they will back up to those particular drives. So every once in a while, if I haven't gone through a client, like for instance, I've had one client for 6 years. We did 180 songs together. And we started off on a 1 terabyte drive and with 2 terabyte drives. Now we've got 4 terabyte drives, and I make him buy 2 drives at a time. So all of that stuff's on his 4 terabyte drives. And because the project is technically over, every 21 days, Backblaze will say to me, well, we haven't seen this drive boot up basically within the last 21 days. In order to keep all the data in the cloud, you must boot it up and blah, 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 blah. Otherwise, we'll dump it. So I just boot it up, turn it on for 6 hours. Everything is fine. It just checks it, makes sure everything's good, and it goes back to life as normal. So,
Tony,
So
what's the
it's-
name of the service again that you're using?
Backblaze, BACK.
Okay, got it.
So it sounds like it's not a good archival solution. If you want to have something that just you can get to maybe a year out, you always have to refresh it periodically so it knows that it's still active.
Well,
That's the one thing I don't like about it.
Yeah, I don't like
What if
that
you're on
either.
vacation?
the thing about it is, though, I mean, how often, and this is the thing, I have that same stuff that's on his 4 terabyte drives are on my tanks. So even after I give him his stuff back, his drives back, I still have it on my personal tanks. So and it's in the cloud. So unless something
That's true.
dramatic happens, I'm going to have it around somewhere.
And no one's mentioned the Sony cloud offering. I'm just curious why that is.
I'm not even aware of that one, to be honest with you.
I mean,
Sony's,
it's had some bumps, starting at some crashes and potential data loss early on, but
Well, if nothing else, this conversation is just a good reminder for best practices in backup and keeping it front of mind as the value of what you guys are creating and saving. And just do you know where your files are?
Hey, Tony, let me ask you a question about the file thing. One of the biggest annoyances, like with Dropbox or Apple or anything like that, is when you do have the desktop application, it tends to pull everything off your desktop and put it in the cloud, almost like they want to trap you into a corner where you can't get it back. And if you disconnect from the cloud, you lose all your files. And I use Dropbox as the web app so I can drop files on it, but it doesn't steal them off my desktop. Do you have that option when you're dealing with this kind of stuff? Or once you get into this, this dark cloud of, online storage, do you lose those files, the ability? I mean, I know they appear on your desktop, but they're not really there a lot of times.
Backblaze is great about uploading almost everything. It will not do your OS, which is an absolute bummer for me. Did you all know that?
no, I did not know that.
Yeah, Backblaze will not do your OS. If you have it touches everything else in your computer, your documents, your iPhotos, all of that stuff, but it will not do your operating system on any level. It stays away.
No, it just does data.
Yes, it just does data. Now I've got it. I think I pay $150 a year for it to do this computer and my laptop. So I feel pretty covered, but it if something crashed, I would be sitting there trying to you know, I'd have to have some kind of auxiliary backup drive in order to have something put onto there to rescue the drive itself. Because it
See,
doesn't.
I've got 24 terabytes of storage space here in my office on 3 different systems. And I use Carbon Copy Cloner. Now you can't clone the new OS for Apple, but you used to be able to clone the old stuff. I used to be able to actually swap disks because, you know, solid state drives don't last any longer than spin drives do. But you know, every night I alternate between 2 different stores for my entire computer. And then I have specific files that I back up on certain things. And then I mean, it just goes on. And then I also have Time Machine. And I do that just because, you know, if I lose the connection to the you know, the cloud, or if the server farm could catch on fire, and, you know, and they back stuff up too, but how long is it going to take to restore it? So I'm a little paranoid of that. I have online backup, so when I go somewhere else, I can grab it. But I have, you know, I've got these little stores all over the place here. There's one in the attic, there's one down here, and there's one in the garage. So if the house burns down, one of them survives, you know?
I think my bigger problem with a lot of these backup systems are if I'm looking for one file, a searchable database online would be so much faster, because when I go to Backblaze, if I'm looking for one particular file from a client, I have to go in there, and then they make it so that you can download it, but you can't download it directly. They have to send you a link to it. It's just like, it's a little complicated.
So that's where metadata comes in. Once you get
Yeah.
into the enterprise class stuff, where they actually have their own software, they have their own GUI, they have their own engineering that put this thing together, metadata tags come along with it. So say, Tony, you just finished a new song, and, you know, you go, while you're composing, you're tagging, say, you know, this is the new Metallica song, this is what it's called. You put in all the searchable criteria or the required information. Once that's done, you get metadata tags on it, and you have a finder, basically a searchable database where you could say, I am looking for the guitar soloist from blah, blah, blah song, or, you know, the drums from blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is that you put in there, it will automatically find it for you and be like, yep, this is what you're looking for. Or these are all the files that have the single, you know, I'm sorry, I'm not a music person, so forgive me if my terminology is
Right, but then once you do that,
incorrect.
Mac, then how difficult is it pulling that file down and not sorting through, you know, because if you've got I was working on a song the other day that was 18 gigabytes for one song.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, because you have version after version after version after version, and it's just like, I'm looking for this vocal that he was saying, yeah, it's the vocal that we did on such and such a date. And I was in Texas. And he was saying, can you just send me that vocal? I'm like looking online, I'm trying to search for it, and like, this is a nightmare.
So anything like that, when you're pulling off the internet, there's going to be a few different factors that come into play. The number one thing is going to be the internet connection, whether you have the right internet connection, whether the client has the internet connection, regardless of how fast your system is, how fast you are, it's going to bottleneck. If you are running a Spectrum home internet, you know, with 10 megs a second or whatever, no matter how fast you can deliver it, they just can't receive it anyways. So that's number one. Number two, I think the greatest thing that you mentioned earlier, the workflow that you have, is that on-prem solution. If you have something that's on-prem versus sitting on the cloud, getting anything on the cloud is going to be a little slow, but on-prem, you could log in, say, with some Jump Desktop or something like that. You connect to your on-prem storage unit, drag and drop that. You could put it in an email, whatever it is, or, you know, send them a file link, and it's done. Versus the cloud is more for a archival, you know, safe, put it up there in case I need it type of storage. It's not the greatest thing if you're looking to access it immediately and deliver a file to your client. The on-prem is what you want to focus on for that.
That said, Max, if you have a bunch of remote workers, then it comes back into play.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's a different setup if you're spinning up a CPU to work, or accessing your own computer. Say if you're running a Teradici as zero client, your computer is sitting in your office and you have your zero client at home. It's basically it mimics your computer. You're using your computer. So there really isn't I don't want to say there's no lag. There is some sort of lag, but it's as good as it's going to get versus you being in front of your own computer.
A lot of those systems, you have to determine whether or not they do the metadata search in their engine, or if it's using your engine and indexing their files. And that can make a heck of a lot of difference in the time it takes to search something. And that's one of the
Correct.
things, if they might give you the search tool, but does the search tool work locally, or does it work on their server? Because if it works on their server, it'll be real quick. But if it's you going through all their data, it could take forever.
Correct. But if you have it set up, in the way you want it, you can bypass all of that. So say if you want the metadata tags to be shared with the cloud, you can have it set. It depends on which system to be honest with you, which you're using. So GB Labs has their own way of doing things. If you go with Open Drives has their own doing things. Cumulo, that's all of their secret sauce, because at the end of the day, they're not manufacturing their own hard drives or their own storage. Somebody else is manufacturing it for them, and they're just putting their secret sauce, their software on it.
Paul, you had mentioned that working with Dropbox, that the files would be taken off your desktop. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. We're not having that. We're having the opposite, actually. When I send something up to the cloud, it is also being told, go ahead and store it on another computer. And it's simultaneously. So we have that backup automatically at another local computer. And then at the end of the day or the end of the week, we'll transfer all those files to another drive, which then we take that drive and basically put it completely offline. And so I know what you're talking about. We originally had that problem. I guess it's with the app. When you use the app, and we're doing it on a PC, I don't know what happens on a Mac in that regard, but we are deriving it from a Mac. The files are being brought up to Dropbox, and then they go to the cloud, and then they're also simultaneously told to go to another local computer at another location.
Yeah, when you mix the systems with some of those things, Google Drive, all that kind of stuff, any of those services, they get kind of weird. I just found that it took me probably 2 weeks to get my iCloud data back onto my computer, and then just set it up for what I wanted it to store. And you can't access it like you can a Dropbox file, but I had the Dropbox app, and I noticed one time we had an internet outage here. That's when the guy blew up the AT&T building down in Nashville. And I couldn't get access to my files. I had all the file names, but they were like not accessible. And that's when I realized that when I dropped them on my desktop, or I dropped them into the Dropbox folder on my desktop, it didn't stay on my desktop. It went up there, and I couldn't get access to it. So that's why I stopped using their desktop app, and I just use the web app, and I just use it as basically a file store, and it works really well for that. But I do it manually, and I do my automatic stuff with all my different hard drives here. So I feel that I got enough backup. And then I take that and I mirror that to my Dropbox files, so I have access to those files. But I definitely don't. I don't know. Even with online licensing, I had a meeting with the guys. One of the AES shows, I had a meeting with one of the guys from iLock. I think it was the president. I was sitting with Glenn Rosenstein, and I said, they had just been hacked. It was then they had that Windows hack, and the hack they got, they didn't hack. They didn't hack the iLock system. What they did is they hacked the line in the Windows code that said it was either valid or not valid. And that's what they made that say, that no matter what, it was valid. And so that's when they started locking all this stuff down. And I said, you know, you have this thing set up so it's constantly checking to see if you've got licenses. I said, why don't you just let it go for 2 weeks and then check it? And he said, well, somebody could clone somebody's hard drive and they could make a record. I said, yeah, they're going to make a record for 2 weeks. And then they're not going to have any of the plugins. And at that point, they're going to have to make a choice. And they're going to have to either buy all those plugins or throw away what they've been working on. And I said, it's actually better for the customers if you do it that way. And that way, if you do have a crash or you do have an outage, a person's work process isn't undone. And that, you know, the whole subscription thing is just getting a little bit out of control where you can't buy the actual product. I'm grandfathered into SolidWorks. I pay $1,500 a year, but every version I get, I download and I can keep. If I were to stop paying that maintenance, I would switch over to the subscription thing. And if I stop paying the subscription, I lose my program. And that just drives me nuts.
If you,
That's my
Paul,
vision
if
for the
you
day.
lose the program, if you stop paying them for the subscription, do you lose access to your projects, or is it that you just don't get support and you don't get the newest versions?
Oh, no, you can access your projects, but you can't access the program. And the thing, you know, it's interesting because Altium, which is a circuit board program, they've always had this attitude where you can take, I have an earlier version of it, and a friend of mine has the latest version of it. We can send files back and forth. The only thing the newer version has is features. But as far as the actual database goes, when it stores that circuit board, it's in exactly the form that it needs to be a circuit board. And when I import it, some of the things I may not have the ability to do certain things, but it's all there. I can continue to edit it. With SolidWorks, every time they come up with a new version, it's not compatible with their old files. So that's part of the problem. If I save something in SolidWorks 2023 and I lose my license and I can't access that, and I go back to my 2020 version, it won't open that file. So that's one of the things that these do. And now, you know, it's like Photoshop, it's not the case because that's a Photoshop file. It's still, they're all compatible because it's just a picture file. But there are some files that you can't access with older versions than what you're using. And if you don't pay the subscription and you lose your newer version, you're out of luck. And that drives me nuts. And that's why I refuse to use a subscription-based program unless I have a compatible program that I own. And one of the, it's the same thing with ProTools. I go right to the guys there and I throw a pissing match, and I have a license for ProTools that won't go away if my subscription runs out. It cost me some money, but that's what I did.
If we on that topic, if we can segue, because some of us have limited time. I've had Chris Mallamaci here on the line from Avid to speak about some Pro Tools updates and a variety of Avid related things. So Tony, if that's okay, can we add Chris to the party here?
Yeah.
Gentlemen,
Hey.
I do have to, ladies and gentlemen, I do have to run as well. However, I just wanted to, Derek, I apologize for jumping in here real quick. David, you put in the chat room Wasabi. Wasabi is a great cloud subscription service. However, watch out for those overages fees. I personally don't use them anymore because of that. Out of nowhere, you'll get a bill that's going to send electricity through your body.
Okay.
Just be careful.
And one other thing is Azure, which is Microsoft's cloud offering. I don't know if
Great.
it's even applicable to audio professionals, but it is another cloud thing that's out there.
Yep.
And data is
Azure,
binary.
Yeah, Azure, Wasabi, all of them, AS3, AWS, all of them, they're perfectly suitable for this. What we're trying to accomplish is just, you got to watch out for the ingress and regress fees and overage charges. That's what's so good about things like Dropbox, where it's one price and the one price only, or Live Cloud,
Right.
or RPMC.
Or RPMC, which there's
Correct.
just
$9. Do whatever
That's
you
it.
want to do. This is how much space you have.
And one more thing here. I'm messing around with iCloud, which I know is really out of this conversation, but the curious thing is when you open a file, is it somehow synced to your backup? So if you make a change to your on-prem data, does it automatically sync?
You could set it up that way, yes.
You can set it up that way. And the other thing that relates to Paul's problem was you have to make sure you're physically copying between your desktop and your cloud. Otherwise, you do what they call a move, which is a Unix thing. You basically move the data and you delete it from the origin, which you don't want to do. So I see that in iCloud. You move stuff and then the origin is gone. You're like, what happened? Anyway, Avid, that's great. I've got some Yukon questions for Avid at the end of their conversation. So I'm going to hang tight and mute myself.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Max.
Take care,
Thanks,
everybody.
Max. Chris.
Chris,
Hey guys, Tony, Barry, thank you for having me. Derek, thanks for including me on the call. It's great to be here. A lot of familiar faces. So yeah, I'm over here at Avid. I'm happy to answer any questions you got. Paul, I totally hear your concern about the subscription-based model of products in general. What's really great about Pro Tools is obviously you have a perpetual license, so that keeps your software intact. And then, you know, each year you're paying the subscription to maintain the updates essentially for the program. So it's a subscription for the support plan and for the updates.
Yeah, that's very appreciative, believe me.
Yeah, no, I totally understand the importance of owning the tools that you use to do the work that you do. So what's great is that the new Mac computers are working extremely well with Pro Tools. So that the M1, the M2 chips, they're doing great, running actually in Rosetta. So using the translation software, you see increased performance over just running Pro Tools on an Intel machine. What's also really great is that the newest version of Mac OS, I believe Ventura, is now qualified. So Mac OS 13 Plus is Ventura, and that's qualified with Pro Tools 2022.12. If it's okay, I'm going to drop a PDF, an interactive PDF in the chat here, which is got a ton of resources about the latest updates of Pro Tools. So essentially all of the what versions of Mac OS are compatible. If you're looking to upgrade a Pro Tools system, the best practices and considerations, and then also how to use aux.io. So something that was new in 2022.9 is the introduction of aux.io. And aux.io is basically a platform that leverages core audio on the Mac OS. So you can be working in Pro Tools, you can maintain your HDX engine, but you could also then bus out audio to anywhere else on your OS using Mac OS core audio. You can also bus in audio from other applications. So for example, if you're remotely producing someone or remotely recording someone, you can send out a Pro Tools feed to Zoom. You could also say if you're working in Logic and you want to use the spatial audio monitoring in Logic, you could send audio from Pro Tools to Logic or from Logic back to Pro Tools, all using aux.io, which is the core audio bridge. And so that's a newer feature that you'd unlock with the latest version of Pro Tools in 2022 plus, that I think really brings a lot of power to using Pro Tools on a Mac OS.
I've been using that feature in my HDX rig with a plugin called Listen Hub by Sonox to measure loudness. So you're mixing and you have this plugin on the 2 bus or the monitor bus, and you have an LUFS and you say, well, look, I'm getting this, but how loud is this compared to like this Twitter thing or Spotify, and so you can directly compare between the latest, single that you like, whatever it is, and you'll see what their LUFS is. I realize it's loudness normalized, but you get a feeling with this meter that Sonox makes, and that happens through aux.io. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a quick way to stay inside of Pro Tools, but still access everything else on your computer.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool feature. What does it have? 8? I think it has 4 stereo pairs. I'm thinking. It's Listen Hub. Sorry, Listen Hub has that. So it's a good feature. Really cool. It's in my template.
And something about aux.io is technically it's an unlimited channel count. You can
Right.
have as many channels as your computer will handle. So when you install this version of Pro Tools, it'll give you it'll fan out some bus widths for you, some standardized 2 in, 2 out, 4 in, 4 out, 8 in, 8 out. But you could actually go into the text file. You could make it 130 channels and use it, say, instead of the Dolby Audio Bridge, because it's that same type of technology.
So Chris, tell me now, with the M2 chip coming, I think it's predicted for April. The word is it'll need a new OS, Mac OS.
Well, so I'm not sure.
So my concern is this: if it needs a new OS, then that means that we're back to zero with Avid and all the plugin companies coming up to speed with all the, changing their stuff. Yes, you can use a wrapper like Rosetta, but that's kind of, for me, defeats the purpose of spending all this money on the fast chip like that. What do you think?
Well, so right now we have, the older Mac, the laptops have the M2 chips. That works with Pro Tools. That's been qualified. I'm actually waiting for a little M2 Mac Mini to come here to start doing some testing with Pro Tools Ultimate and HDX. But just like these new versions of the OS, say like Ventura, that just got qualified, that's more of the process. So it's not going to be as intensive like the last couple of years, switching from totally Intel based to this M1. All of that work that was done to qualify the M1 and get that processor approved for Pro Tools is going to carry over to the M2. And so, the work that all these third-party plugin providers have been doing to get M1 plugins to operate, that's going to carry over to M2.
So they're already talking about the M3 and M4 chips in a couple of years anyway. But so M2 chip, April, I'm thinking about getting a new cheese grater with the M2 chip because I want all the slots. I want all that stuff. Anyway.
Well,
you think, am I going to have, it says I have to use the next OS.
Just as an aside, Barry, the Mac Studios with a Sonnet chassis are super sexy and they work.
You're right. But it only got 2 slots there, right?
Correct.
Yeah, not enough.
So Derek and Chris both, are you saying that the hit move then is just to get the 20 core Mac Studio for like X number of, it stops at 64 gigabytes, right? So
the Mac Studio is an incredible machine.
We know that,
Extremely
but it doesn't have enough slots even with the Sonnet chassis.
Well, with Sony and Netflix and others are buying them up like
I don't
popcorn.
care. I don't care. I need at least 3 slots, if not 4 slots.
I'll have to check with Sonnet to see if they have a wider solution. I'm sure they probably do.
You may be able to use 2 of those 3-card PCIe Sonnet chassis together on 2 separate
I have to
Thunderbolt
verify
buses.
that. Yeah.
Well, if that's possible, seems like an awful lot of stuff to hang off your Thunderbolt. Was it Thunderbolt 3 we're talking about?
Yeah, it would be Thunderbolt 3, which works well. What PCIe cards are you using, Barry?
2 HDX cards, a UAD card. I have a video card I'd like to keep running. And I'm understanding that you don't necessarily, with this new computer, you don't necessarily have to use the video on the chip that they have, right? You can not use that and use your own video card. So anyway, I'm just in the holding pattern, and I'd like to know.
Yeah, I believe you can use two Sonnet Echo 3 chassis together, but I'd be interested to test that, because using that with a Mac Studio, I think, would be a powerhouse rig.
Sounds good to me.
So how are, okay, you said that everyone's buying those up, Chris. How are they
Yeah.
getting away? I mean, what kind of displays are they running with a Mac Studio?
So, I mean, you can do up to like 3 displays. So you have the HDMI output, on the computer. But I know me, so I'm using this 16-inch M1 MacBook Pro, right? So the Ultra, similar to the Mac Studio. I use a little OWC Thunderbolt 3 hub that has 2 HDMI outputs on it. So just using a laptop, I can actually get 3 screens. I have the HDMI out on the physical computer, and I get 2 more HDMI outs using a little Thunderbolt adapter. And so for me, getting those 3 screens, that works really well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like I said, with Sony in particular, they're doing Mac Studios with a couple of Dell 27-inch monitors and using that OWC adapter.
Do you think it's worth getting the M1, or do you think it should just wait till the M2 comes out with the Studio Mac?
You could wait a little bit. I would wait. If you need something today, M1's going to be great. It'll easily last you the next 7 years.
Yeah, you'll die if you wait, because it'll be like the minute you go, okay, I'm going to buy the M2, then there'll be the Apple thing. Hey, we're introducing the M3. And then it's just like, and you wait for that. And then you wait for that. And it's like,
There's
what
never a
happened to
good time
Tony?
to
I
buy a
don't know.
computer.
Yeah,
Let's be honest,
there's
never a good time.
there's always new technology,
All right.
but
Look, let me
I'm
interject something
impressed.
here. I
Please.
got the Mac Pro 2019 because of the PCIe card issues. I got an Army card, 2 UADs, an NVMe card for additional SSD. We're waiting for the Studio with slots in it. When that happens, people will move to that. But how long are you going to wait?
Well, but you're saying you're waiting for that, David?
No, I bought right at the M1, right before the M1 dropped, or around the same time. I bought the Intel Mac Pro Tower, the 2019 Mac Pro that was the flagship at the time. We're still waiting for a Studio or a Pro machine with slots.
Yeah, I don't know that that's coming.
Right. So not only do you have to you have the expense of the cards, but now the chassis cost. So you have to factor that in.
I don't know. I don't know if that's true.
This is why I'm waiting till April, and maybe the new cheese grater will be out then. Okay.
The new cheese grater is going to be, I mean, okay, if a Mac Studio, say $4,000, $5,000, and a cheese grater from them is 15.
8.
Are they dropping the price of the cheese grater?
No, they won't do that.
That's what I'm saying. So it doesn't make sense to get the cheese grater when a Mac Studio with a Sonnet card will do what you got to do. 2
Sonnet chassis at least, and it might work. And I don't like the idea of hanging all that stuff off that Thunderbolt. It's a reliability issue for me.
I have got I got every single port in my studio plugged in with an expander, and it's a fucking mess. I mean, it really is. And the thing is, if something hits one of those things, the high-speed data and stuff like that right now, wiggling a connector like that can sometimes create a problem where something will just unhook. So, I mean, I've got USB 3 regular hubs. I've got another hub that has more USB and some C's on it. I've got a hub that has this. I got a hub that has that. I got one in back underneath it does all the mice and all the other crap I have. It would be nice if they just had like, 25 of each port on it and be done with it. But you got to like use these expanders, and then it really gets risky.
All right,
You're talking about
look.
losing something in the middle of a take or something like that. It's like, dude,
The external chassis makes sense for your spinning rust drives. I've got an OWC box that has 4 spinning rust drives in it. That's sort of my on-prem backup. But for putting high-speed cards like the UAD card or whatever you may be using inside an external box with so many meters of cable, that sucks. That's just lame. You want it close to the motherboard. And the only way to do that is to have a box with physical slots inside the chassis of your PC.
So I was just hoping to walk away from this meeting with the understanding of what the time when the new tower would arrive, and some idea of the cost. I know that's a little touchy, but
Yeah, that's a closely guarded secret with Apple that they are not sharing, unfortunately.
because that's what I want to. That's what I want.
I think to Chris's point, Mac Pros will not be cheaper. I remember when Mac Pros were $3,000, and then now you can easily spend 40. So
that's all I want. And these glasses and this chair.
don't quote my favorite movie, please.
I got to bolt, you guys. Love all you. I'll talk to you.
Well,
See you, Paul.
I've got one quick question based on what I'm hearing. How often does everyone change their computers? Every year, every 2 years, or because of some revolutionary change in a chip or something? How often do you guys change your computers?
5 to 8 years.
5 to 8 years.
It's expensive. If you buy a top of the line machine for $8,000,
Yeah.
fill it with RAM and SSDs,
Right.
and buy an external 4K monitor or whatever the flavor of the month is,
Okay. Yeah.
you want to get some return on it.
Okay.
I would say that's accurate. Most people I know are holding onto their machines 8 years plus.
Wow. Interesting. Okay.
Because
Quickly,
they're stable and they work.
Yeah, I'm running a 2009, still running grade 16. It has 6 SSD cards internally, and it hasn't failed me yet.
Okay.
I just replaced 12 computers at a post-production facility, and they were actually over 10 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, how many people are still running trash cans?
Yeah.
Right?
I'm not even up to a trash can. I'm running what I'm looking at it now. It's a Mac Pro. It's a 2012, mid 2012.
Oh, you're due for an upgrade.
Well, I'm not debating that I'm due for an upgrade. What I'm saying is I'm not going to put a lot of money into a system that is like, oh, the new hottest is, the new hotness is coming out in 2024, and yet you just dropped all of it into this year. And I'm not putting $15,000 into a Mac Pro. That's not going to happen, guys. That's
Tony,
not.
I'm totally with you.
I-
I have a power supply for 2009. I'm actually going to be looking at a 2010 or 2012, just for the backup purposes. I mean, there's no need to really. People are talking to me about, run much faster. I have 2 other Mac Minis, which I literally paid under $300 for, and they support everything else I have to do because I use different types of, VSL, if you're familiar with it, what is that? VN Ensemble Pro. So I drop all my virtual ints on those things and render them right back into Pro Tools. I mean, they run smooth and it runs great.
Most of the people I know, and I should just say this limit maybe to LA. Most of the people I know in LA have a circa 2010, 2012 cheese grater Mac. And they're not, because when the Mac Pros come out and it's like, yeah, we can do that for $15,000. You're like, whoa, I can't amortize that. Rates keep falling in the industry, and Apple's thinking like, oh yeah, you're still charging a grip a day for your work. It just doesn't work that way.
If you guys don't mind, I wanted Chris to talk about one other thing that can maybe help you amortize. While most of the folks on this call, I believe, are, again, on the audio side, more and more media and your clients are mixed media. So they're not just audio, there's a video component to their creativity. And there's some good news from Avid on that front. And I think Chris can share.
Yeah, so at Avid, there's ProTools and there's also Media Composer. And for the longest time, they really did not play well together. And if you're creating a film or an advertisement or a television show, it was always quite a hassle to get the audio assets from the picture from the video editor to then make an audio mix, and then also put that audio back to picture. One of the latest updates to actually Media Composer is to be able to export a Pro Tools session directly from Media Composer. No more AAF, no more OMF, no more chasing down files. It'll actually export a Pro Tools session, give you a video track with all the video cuts, so you could actually tab to transient to see where the picture editor made cuts. It'll give you a video track mix down, so you could play the video in Pro Tools. It'll give you a couple of folders as well. So on the latest version of Pro Tools, there's folders and folder buses, essentially. And so it's a way to organize your tracks within Pro Tools. And so in this export from Media Composer, it'll give you all of the rendered audio. So if the video editor did any processing, any effects, any clip effects, that'll all be preserved for the audio mixer to either use or reference. And then underneath that, it'll give you an unrendered folder of all the raw audio tracks. So then you have complete control over manipulating that media. And it also preserves any markers or notes that the picture editor made. And so it's just an update that really improves the communication and the workflow between audio editor, mixer, and the picture editor. And so, that's something was long overdue that we're happy to now say exists between Media Composer and Pro Tools.
So Chris, if I can cut in media, you're saying you can do clip effects and all these Pro Tools things and then export that to Pro Tools. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Or the other way around, you can import from Pro Tools into media.
We're working on the latter right now. So currently as it exists, you can export out of Media Composer, makes a Pro Tools session, takes all of the
But
audio
you said
effects.
tab to transients and clip effects. You're doing that in
Yes.
media?
So
That's what you
in
said.
Media Composer, yes, in Media Composer, you make picture cuts.
Right. You're saying that's a tab to transient. It becomes a tab to transient in Pro Tools?
Correct.
Oh,
It'll
cool.
give you 2 video tracks. It'll give you a track with all the cuts on it. And so you can tab to transient to see where the cuts are.
Right.
So it's
awesome.
an easy way to see where the picture
And
cuts
you can
are.
do clip effects in media? Can you do that in media?
In Media Composer?
Yeah, you said clip effects.
Yes. So any effects that are put onto the clips in Media Composer, it'll be rendered and it'll move over to Pro Tools so you can reference it. So you won't be able to adjust the parameters. It'll be baked in and rendered, but you can use it as a reference, or you can use it.
And what about time code and frame and all that stuff? Does that get moved into Pro Tools as it was in media?
Yeah, it preserves the whole session.
Awesome.
So everything's already organized and in time for you. I mean,
so we can see that working at the NAMM show?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Chris, in reference to Pro Tools, do they now have provisions for 2 video track outputs simultaneously?
No, we're still working with the one one viewable video track. No, but tell me, Andy, what would you like to see, and how would you like to use it?
Because it's proprietary, we'll have to talk about it offline. I'm sorry. I will ask another question, though, that is the record tally. Having access to the record tally status so as to use it as a trigger for a macro. Is that available?
That is very interesting. I know that we have just opened up Pro Tools for some enterprise customers to access SDK scripting, and I'm curious to know if maybe we can integrate that in some type of script, because that's I can see an interesting use case for that.
I'm really used to it. With the Fairlight systems, we were using various tallies to implement automatic and semi-automatic switches, and and it was pretty handy.
Yeah, I can see it being very useful.
Hey, Chris, can I ask something, please?
Absolutely.
You got a moment to go over something small like Yukon, and my question is this. Does Yukon, with its upgrades, always hold hands with the latest upgrades in Pro Tools? In other words, I have a brand new iPad, but I have a slightly older Pro Tools system. Can I put a version on Pro Tools that'll talk to my new iPad, and or does it all have to be the newest of the new to make it all match?
This is a really great question. So the answer is yes. The versions need to match. So I'm assuming you're referring to the Avid control app that you could pull up on an iPad or a tablet. It can be Apple iOS, or it can be Android. It's a free app that you can download, and you essentially connect it to Yukon. And how you can do that is either by using a Wi-Fi router and connecting it wirelessly, or you can get some type of Ethernet adapter and hardwire your tablet into your main Yukon switch. But to answer your question, yes, the Yukon versions need to match. And no, just updating Pro Tools does not update Yukon.
Not turning it the other direction. What about an old version of Pro Tools with a new version of Yukon? And let me add,
that should work.
Let me add one more thing to the soup. I have an S3 controller, not quite as big as the one you're in front of, or a picture of it, but I don't even know what Yukon it runs on, but it runs. And so will this all stop working if I try to put my iPad into the system?
So it won't stop working, but it won't see your iPad. So what I would recommend doing is downloading the latest Yukon installer. When you download it and you run the installer, it gives you the option to, yes, install for S3, install for S6 or S4. Don't worry about any of that. First thing that you got to do is go down to the bottom and uninstall Yukon and remove preferences. So it's 2 checkboxes. So you run that in the installer. It'll remove the application on your computer and delete the preferences. Then you open up the installer again to install the latest version. Then you can install for the S3 or the Artist series or the S6 or S4, whatever you're using. In this case, it would be for the S3. So you would run that, it would download the latest version. Then I would launch the latest version. I would go connect your S3 to put it on the workstation, check for a firmware update, see if there's a firmware update for the S3. If there is, update it. If not, no problem. Then you'll be on the latest version of Yukon. You'll be able to go to the iOS store or the Android store, download the control app, and then you'll be able to link it to Yukon on your computer.
One more thing. Is it fussy about which version of Mac operating system?
That's a good question. I believe in the doc that I sent, so I sent this link to a Dropbox link in the chat here. And if we look at, let's see here. I'm going to go to the knowledge base, and there's a nice chart. Okay, so Yukon. So it'll tell you, it gives you Big Sur on Intel, Big Sur on M1, Monterey. So what OS are you using?
I think it's a 10.12, which is a couple notches.
That's, what is that, like Snow Leopard?
No, that's 10.6. Come on. No, that's
You know, Wes, I'm going to drop my email in the chat. Just email me your OS.
It's
and
Sierra. It's Sierra.
Okay, it's Sierra, not High Sierra.
no, it's not high yet.
Okay,
Make it
Sierra. High Sierra runs better than Sierra, but I'm going to drop my email
really
in the
old.
chat.
I don't even know how it even works. Wow.
Yeah,
Well,
that's pretty
I
old.
don't know. Maybe I'm old-fashioned and fussy, but I just hate breaking things. When it works, I just go, guess what? It works. So
This is the other reason why I want the new machine, because I'm starting to see Mojave isn't even supported by Quicken anymore. That's 10.13. I mean, it's the end of life with that OS. If you need,
don't get me started on old versions of Quicken, but that's another story.
all right.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
Quicken is now a subscription. I don't know if you know that, but I went through that.
Yes, and it steals everything.
Yeah, I'm just. If you get Quicken Deluxe, it runs for a year, and then if you don't want to renew, it still runs.
Okay, cool.
I had a guy take my 2012 and he made it so it will run Mac OS Monterey.
Mhm.
And it runs pretty solidly. It gets me up to date somewhat, but I know at some point that's got to happen. I've had this machine for 12 years.
Well, by the way, Greg told me that mine would run that just fine, but I'd have to replace my video card.
There you go, Mojave.
Okay, not the worst thing on earth, but.
Chris, one question for you.
Yeah.
With Media Composer, which version are you able to export? Is that with the Ultimate or with the Standard?
That's a good question. I believe it's the Ultimate. It may be both. I know it's in the 2022.12 Media Composer.
Yeah, that's important because you have a lot of freelance guys who are using Media Composer Standard because of fees. So they just want to, I just want to make sure they don't sing that song about, hey, we can export right out to Pro Tools for you. No, you can't.
Yeah, I'm going to double check on that because that's a good point. There is two versions.
Yeah. Well, there's three. You got the free, but that's limited.
If I could jump in here on Yukon, if we got just a few minutes. I don't know if I'm probably in the minority, but I have Artist Series, the fader bank. What was it called? Artist Mix. I have a Artist Control. I have an Artist Euphonics MC Transport. That's my control surface to Logic. And I just upgraded to the latest U control, which is let's see, 4.10.2.81. And I got to tell you, a lot of my macros don't work. Spacebar doesn't work inside of a touch macro. Key commands that used to work don't work anymore. The little jog wheel on the Artist Control doesn't work anymore. Should I revert back to the old version which worked, or are you guys aware of this, or is Logic
So it depends.
Exist in the Avid ecosystem?
Well, no. So Yukon, Yukon supports the Yukon application. So, that's Avid, that's Logic, and a handful of other ones. So we're not testing for Logic and stuff, but it works. That being said, the changes in the key commands on the computer, that could also be an Apple thing with an Apple update. I know that on our machines, we'll go into the system preferences and disable like the spotlight search for when you're doing key commands in Pro Tools.
Right.
That way you don't open up the spotlight search if you're using the spacebar command or something like that. But if it's directly related to Yukon, I would try to go back to the older version just to troubleshoot it. But if you will, just send me an email.
I will do that,
What
but-
exactly broke, and I can ask about it.
I mean, the key commands still work from my keyboard, and all I've done is inside of a macro, I've assigned a key command in Yukon, and the latest version doesn't work. But you also hinted at maybe I need to uninstall Yukon, then reinstall it because it will delete the preferences.
Yeah, every update for Yukon, that's what I would recommend, is completely uninstalling it rather than installing over it. Uninstall it, remove the prefs, and then reinstall the
I'm going to
latest
try
version.
that. And one other thing that you should share with your team, it's extremely hard to find the download for Yukon. You have to hunt through a myriad of pages before you hit that page that says, here's the download link.
Yeah. So do you have any Yukon control services registered to your Avid account? Because that would be the easiest way. The easiest way would go to My Avid, and then you find, like, if it's the S3 or whatever, and then you hit more info, and it should show you your downloads for that product, and Yukon would be in there.
Okay, just my experience has been the opposite of that. It should take 2 minutes to get the latest, turns into 10 to 15 minutes of hunting through pages, and then ultimately you stumble upon it. But
I second that.
okay, someone agrees with me. Thank you. Amen to that. And glad to have you on the group today, Chris. So appreciate you very much.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me here, guys. Barry, Tony, a lot of familiar faces. Like I said, it's really great to be in the same room with you guys. And I'm always learning something new every day. So I'm happy to share what I know with you guys. And if you need anything, feel free to reach out, send me an email,
and
we
the
can even
video
jump on the phone.
The video quality you're giving us is the best of anybody. I gotta
Cool,
find out
cool.
what camera and lighting you're using.
Yeah, look, and it's pretty simple. But thank you, Andy. Yeah, this is a new little setup. So I'm sitting in our little Dolby Atmos studio that I just spent the last couple of months totally renovating. So as you can see behind me, I got Cali Audio, a monitor system. I'm using Triad Orbit mounts all around to hold up these surrounds, the ceiling. Actually, Triad Orbit hardware to hold up this camera and the lighting. So it's really cool. And we got 2 of these cameras in here. One is actually overhead on top of the console of the S6. So, we can make demo videos and be able to show people exactly what we're doing. And it's a little 4K webcam, actually. It's a 4K PTZ webcam. I believe this is only 1080 right now to stream, but it's like $250 or $300, and you can control it. A lot of settings. I believe it's not a full sensor. I think it's like a half sensor camera. But I'm glad you think it's cool.
It's really good.
Quality.
And the model number of the camera?
I'll send it to you. It's
Very good.
The brand I believe is something Link 360, LINK 360.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think we'll tie it off right then and there. Thanks so much.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah, and learn something new every time on these things.
Derek and Chris, you're always invited back.
Sure.
Great
Thank you
day.
very much. It was
It's a recurring link code, so you can use that same code.
Anytime you want to pop in again, we would love to have you. It was awesome.
Thank you
very
guys.
much,
Thank you.
everybody.
Have a good day, y'all. Take care.
We're good.
Happy Thursday.
Bye-bye.